It's time to begin looking at our first etude, Autumn, and this one features an arpeggiation fingerstyle technique. That refers to a specific pattern that we'll be playing with our fingers, one at a time, usually in ascending or descending order. The first part of this pattern we're going to try out as a warm-up, and that means we're going to put our left hand in an E minor shape, like this, with our two fingers on the second fret of the 5th and 4th string. Our right hand, we're going to keep our fingers stable on a few strings. If you're not used to doing this, think about putting your thumb on the D string, your index finger on the G string, middle finger, B string, ring finger, E string. Let's try, just as a warm-up for the warm-up, to play these 4 strings in a row. Once you feel comfortable doing that, we're going to try this specific arpeggiation that we're going to be using in the Autumn etude. This is going to be thumb, index, middle, thumb, index, ring. Let's try this together now at 60 beats per minute. Please follow along with me. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. Something that you might notice as a little bit of a challenge is trying to keep the hand still as you're playing these. We want to avoid the hand bouncing out. Another thing to think about is keeping the angle of the fingers at around 45 degrees. Try to prevent your hand from looking a little too sideways, or we might get this scraping sound along the string. Let's try one more exercise. This time we're going to be switching the pattern a little bit more midway through. Let's once again put our left hand in an E minor shape, and our right hand is going to start off with the same pattern that we used in the first warm-up. But then we're going to switch so that our thumb is now all the way on the low string, and our other 3 fingers, which had previously been on strings 1, 2, and 3, are going to shift over to be on strings 2, 3, and 4. Let's see if we can try this on its own before we try the switch. Once you feel comfortable doing that, let's continue on and we'll play this full warm-up. First starting out with the first pattern that we used and then switching to the second one, and we'll do that twice. Follow along with me at 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. So as you can see, we're using the same basic arpeggiation style of 3 strings in ascending order, but the right hand has to change to accommodate the different string changes. Our thumb is always going to be playing the lowest note, whatever that is, in those 3-note sets. But the other fingers are going to have to adjust based on if we're using strings 1, 2, and 3, or if we're using strings 2, 3, and 4. And that's going to be the challenge that we'll see as we turn to the full etude. See you in the next lesson. Now that we've warmed up using the right hand technique, it's time to learn the etude. And here we'll find that it's a very similar right hand pattern that we're going to be using, but we'll also be combining that with some left hand chord changes. So let's take a look at the first line of music. And we'll see that we start off in this shape, which almost looks like part of a D minor, if you know that chord. But we're actually not going to need the other third finger there. We're going to use just fingers 1 and 2 here. First finger, first fret, first string. Second finger, second fret, third string. My thumb, index, and ring finger are all that I need for this first part. And I'm playing on strings 4, 3, and 1, like so. Now, the other little wrinkle here is that we're going to be alternating between this shape and lifting our index finger off, like this. Once you feel comfortable with that, we're going to look at the second chord change now. Thankfully, we can leave our middle finger here for this next chord, but our ring finger on our left hand is now going to be on the 3rd fret on the E string, like so. Now, the other change here is that our fingers, just like in the warm-up that we just practiced, have to shift over from being on strings 1, 2, and 3 to being on strings 2, 3, and 4. And our thumb is now going to be all the way on the low string. And it's going to sound like this. Notice that I'm using thumb, index, middle, thumb, index, ring. So, when we put this all together, the first line of music sounds like this. Let's try that together at 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. Don't forget to use the looping function here to play that as many times as you need to. This piece repeats that line twice before the third line begins the same way but changes halfway through. It starts off with the same shape and pattern that we've been using, and then moves to an E minor shape, and our thumb and fingers once again have to move to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings. Then we move to putting our ring finger on the 3rd fret on the E string and playing like so. Let's see if we can try the 3rd and 4th lines together now at 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. Now that we've practiced each line of this piece separately, let's try to put it together and play the entire first section of this piece. And I recommend that you practice each of those individual sections that we just covered, and you can even go back to the warm-up to practice that right-hand pattern if you're having a little bit of difficulty with it. We're going to try the whole thing at a slightly faster tempo now, at 80 beats per minute. See if you can play along with the entire first section of the Autumn Etude. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. And that's the first section of the Autumn Etude. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at the second section and trying to practice the piece as a whole. See you there. Now it's time to learn the second half of the Autumn Etude. In the first lesson, we talked about an arpeggiation technique of ascending or descending variety. The first half of this etude used the ascending variety. Here we're now going to switch the direction of the fingers. But there's going to be another wrinkle, which is that our thumb is now going to accompany a melody note that we're going to be playing with our ring finger. So, first, to practice this, let's see if we can find the first chord of the B section, which is going to be played with our pinky and third finger, both on the 5th fret, on the G string and the E string. The challenge of this is going to be making sure that your fingers are curved enough that we can still hear that middle B string. If your fingers are too flat, that note will be muted. And that can be a little bit of a challenge when you're starting out, so make sure to take time to get this hand position right. And you can look at my hand as a guide here. Next, let's try to play this descending arpeggiation. We're going to use ring, middle, index in that order on strings 1, 2, 3, like this. Once you feel comfortable playing that, we're going to add in the thumb playing with the ring finger, like so. Let's see if we can try just this idea at 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. Something to look out for when you're practicing this is making sure that your hand doesn't bounce out too much when you play with the thumb and ring at the same time. There's a tendency for the hand to want to come out like that. We want to keep the hand in the same spot. It's okay if it moves a little bit, but certainly try to avoid any massive movement out like this. Keep in mind that the motion should still be originating with the fingers and not so much with the wrist or the forearm. Now that we've practiced that technique, let's see if we can apply it to this second section. So this part is going to sound like this. Notice that the pattern stays the same the whole time, and that these 3 fingers on the right hand are staying on strings 1, 2, and 3 for this section, so they're not moving around. That can make things a little bit easier and give us a little more time to focus on the left hand, which is a little more involved for this section. Let's see if we can play through this entire part at 60 beats per minute, and then we'll talk about it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. And so you can see that we have a few different left-hand challenges here. I encourage you to practice the left-hand shapes on their own. You can play through them with the right hand like this. But the important thing here is to make sure that you're aware of the left-hand changes that are coming up and seeing where you can keep fingers down. For example, in this first couple measures, we have this change to this. But notice that my ring finger can stay right where it is. And noticing those sorts of things is really essential when you're playing fingerstyle pieces, because there's going to be some motion between the fingers, and you want to make sure that your other fingers are staying where they need to be. This chord in particular, F, might be a little bit challenging. Let's talk about this one. We're going to be putting our first finger on the first fret, our second finger also on the first fret, but on the second string, kind of far away. And then our middle finger is going on the second fret on the G string. And this one again is a challenge to make sure that this middle finger, or this ring finger, doesn't collapse and block the middle finger. You can see that that sort of thing can happen, where either the middle finger is blocked, or we can also get that buzzy open E string. So making sure that these fingers are really going straight down, you can see how angled my left hand is, to make sure that all the notes come out nice and clean. This section plays through this part twice, but it ends on a different chord the second time. Instead of going from to, it instead goes downwards to an E chord. And then ends with this arpeggiation here, where we're going to actually put our fingers all the way down on strings 3, 4, and 5, so that we can roll with these fingers like this. And then move them up a string. And then one more time. Let's see if we can try that at 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. And now let's try to play all the way through the second section with both endings. Given that you've now had a chance to practice it a little bit, we're going to bump up the speed slightly to 80 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. After that, the piece returns to the A section and plays a shortened version of it before ending. Now, as a final challenge, let's play through the entire tune. And we're going to do it at 100 beats per minute, which is a goal speed here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, go. So that's the Autumn Etude, and we've explored a lot of different techniques related to arpeggiation fingerstyle textures. I encourage you to keep practicing that piece, and if you feel comfortable and it feels easy playing it at 100 beats per minute, then by all means continue to bump up the speed to 120 or even 140. Next up, we're going to be looking at a totally new fingerstyle pattern. See you in the next lesson.